the Bible, so I knew the word, but I didn't know the theological terms. And so I was like, I want to learn more. And so I was like, I'll take a New Testament course as an elective, because I had an elective I could take, thinking it would be like Sunday school. It was nothing like that.
Sunday school is a decision that you know.
Sunday school, and yes, at a state university is nothing like Sunday school, because it's a secular university. So my professor said the first day, I'm going to change everything you thought you knew about Jesus. That's when I knew that this was going to be Sunday school. Our textbook was Bart Ehrman. If y'all know anything about Bart Ehrman, he was an agnostic at the time. I heard he's an atheist now, but he does a lot to undermine the reliability of the text. But he is a New Testament scholar, but just a very, very progressive view at the text. So that was my first time encountering textual criticism and all of that. And it was just so much. I was overwhelmed, and it sent me into this crisis of faith. And my dad introduced me to apologetics during that moment. And he was just like, check this out. And that helped me navigate that space. And so, I felt that's kind of the genesis of my apologetics kind of interest.
How do you define, how do you define apologetics, right? For somebody who's kind of like, what does that mean for people who are kind of like not familiar with that term?
So for people, I tell them that it's an intellectual understanding of the Christian faith. I break it down to a person who wouldn't know all the term and say it's how you intellectually engage others around your Christian faith. And people usually get it then. But to someone who is a non-believer, not church, I feel like that's the easiest way to explain it.
I think this is so powerful because the thinking, even having an interest of wanting to go into banking and being a stockbroker, you typically think a profile of someone like that beyond just the Gordon Gekko, Wall Street, Michael Douglas, view. There's also the personality type that needs concrete. I'm empirical. I need hard facts and things. And the perception, particularly for people who may not have been educated and are on faith, is that, it's just this spiritual thing that's not actually tied to real history. And it's this. And, going into apologetics, I think about questions and how there's certain things that are to be known. And then there's certain things where you'll learn by and by, as the saying goes. Mm-hmm. So were you someone that early on you were comfortable with the discomfort? Even though you had that part of your brain that understood the numbers and liked things like that, there's a part of you which was comfortable in this space of just exploration where there's certain answers and questions you couldn't answer. Are you a balance of that, or am I completely off in just how people perceive that?
So I think that's a great observation. I really never questioned my faith till I got to college because I was in a Bible bubble. I was a PK. I was around other Black kids that have church affiliation, and that wasn't the conversations we were having. We kind of just accepted the faith of our parents. This is what it is. I think the most critically I had thought about what I believed was when I was 4 or 5, and during offering, it was we're gonna give this money to God, and I was wondering how the money was gonna get to God. Did it go back? Is it going in the back and there's an altar? Because we're learning about the sacrifice and things going up with fire. So I'm thinking, are they taking the money and it's a fire altar in the back? That's the most critically I had thought about that. So it's just full sail taking everything that we learned in church and believing it. I never questioned it until college. Because it's just, I wasn't in the context to question it. It wasn't what we did. Yeah.
This is perfect because I think normally, the conversation that we've had even on the show has been where the people talk about two levels, right? Particularly my brothers and sisters who particularly came up in the South, or they just they were close to the church. It was I was my home faith, and like it was important, and seeds were planted, and I was discipled, and some people came catechized, and then they got to a place where they had to encounter for themselves, or they had an encounter with God that really blew them away. Did you have any of those experiences, kind of like once you kind of got out and you started now questioning, like a pivotal encounter with God that kind of was just like affirming, like, wow, I believe, it's that early in your life when you're kind of going through these new questions?
Yeah, so college, when I was struggling, I'm reading Apologists, but I'm also reading what I'm reading in class, struggling, came home one night, just in my room crying like, God, I just don't know what to believe. And I remember playing Bible lottery. If anybody knows what Bible lottery is, it's when you're praying and you open the Bible and hope it falls on a passage that's going to be helpful. And it's really not helpful when you land on like a genealogy and you're like, okay, I guess I gotta roll.
You were in Matthew,
gotta roll the dice again.
Where were you at?
But at this particular time, my Bible opened to the passage in John where the disciples are leaving because Jesus said, you have to eat my flesh and drink my blood. And everybody's leaving except, the 12. And he looks at Peter and said, will you also go? And Peter says, where can I go? You have the words of eternal life. And at that moment, it was like something clicked. Like, where can I go? This is the faith that sustained me and grounded me, and this is all I know. And at that moment, I committed myself like, God, I don't know all the answers, but I'm going to commit myself to finding the answers and helping other people. And so that's when my crisis of faith became a call in that moment.
I appreciate this. I kind of want to let that breathe a bit, because some of the common conversations that I have with people who are just exploring is around, they either feel that their encounter is not like, it's not real, or it wasn't burning bush enough, right? That's number one. But number two, which is something I know that you've experienced, is just they didn't feel comfortable with the questions or accepting. They felt it was just that I can't question like this. That means I don't have good faith, and I don't mean, where you in the question, God met you kind of in like a James 4:8, like he met you in that moment of leaning in with all of these questions. That, like,